Action.
Oh, peace, sis. How you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling excellent, Brother Mike. I'm very happy to be here, as you can see.
Ah,
And what
mm,
about you?
I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling better than okay. Let's not just say okay. I'm feeling better than okay.
Yeah.
It's been a little rough today, but I'm glad that we finally starting off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is necessary conversations. Our first
Necessary.
uh podcast with each other using the Zoom technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Thank you, Zoom.
and we always have the dopest conversations, and our conversations are not dictated by what's trending in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Our conversations are not dictated by like knee-jerk reactions to outside injustices and oppressions. Not to say that we're definitely black, people, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel a responsibility to our people to help to shed light for our people to begin a journey of learning how not just to be bitter and angry and upset and feeling like, um, that there's nothing that they can do positive, for themselves, but, to through our own inner work and our own inner journey provide an opportunity for people to have deep conversations, about being men, about being women, about being spiritual, about healing and
Mm-hmm.
redeeming themselves and knowing that they have the power to be whoever they want to be. And I find a lot of times that people don't are not open to having those types of conversations, or sometimes I feel um like if you're not angry enough or you're not bitter enough, man, then you selling out, or somehow, and I've wanted to have deeper conversations for those who are ready to move on from being victims, so
Mm-hmm.
we've been talking about this for a while, and so I'm glad
Yeah,
that we
yeah, it's
finally
been a
started
while.
this.
Wow.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, so we do have we definitely have, basically we can't talk to each other without it going over 60 minutes. So, and it's good, and it's always good, and um it's like enrichment, it's like food, nourishing conversation. um
Hmm.
and like when we get off the phone, it's always like, sometimes we could get off the phone and it could be like when you eat a good meal and you might just be ready to go to sleep. And then sometimes it could be very energizing, and then when you get off the phone, you like, and both of those are good outcomes to a great conversation. So
Hmm.
I'm glad that we're getting on the board, and here we are, um, carrying it out. So um,
Hmm. Hmm.
so we can say, who we are, what we do, right? So
Definitely.
yeah, so introduce yourself, Brother Mike.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Brother Mike, better known as Brother Mike X. I'm a wow. I'm a father, an uncle, a son, a cousin. I'm someone who's definitely been involved where I grew up in the Northeast Bronx. I grew up in the projects. I still live not too far from the projects that I grew up in. Um, I've been active in the community, in local politics to a degree. I've worked to form a various local initiatives to bring the people together so that we can have greater say so in our living standards, along the lines of politics and having greater say so in our communities. I've worked with young people for almost 30 years now,
Mm-hmm.
in various capacities, from group homes to community centers to foster care. You know, presently I work in the juvenile justice system with young people. They who tend to be Black and they tend to be brown. You don't get that many white people, you know, but you, every now and then you get a white youth who's falling through the cracks a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those white kids that fall through the cracks, 9 times out of 10, is because they're trying to copy what has become known as Black culture, so to speak, you
Mm-hmm.
know, from the negative spectrum, you know, hood culture, you know, or maybe even some would say gang culture, you know. So you get a white kid who is trying to be Black, you know,
Okay,
pseudo, you
trying to
know,
be. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
trying to be what people have ascribed, you know, and what some of us are living down to, you know, as Black culture, you know, through the that's been popularized through the music and popularized through the
Mm-hmm.
the movies, you know, that show us as gangbangers and stuff like that. So anyway, um, and I've lived most of my adult life trying to help us to help ourselves. And what I've come to realize is that a lot of us have not done the type of inner work that we need to be able to focus on doing so that we can be free, you know, and we are free, but a lot of us don't live our lives as if we are free. And so hence necessary conversations with my sister Ella,
Yes.
who exists in a state of freedom within herself. And I can't wait for you to introduce yourself so that we can, you know, get it on in private.
Okay. Um, so I'll start out how you start. I'll copy you.
Mhm.
I am a mother, and I'm a person, with family. My family is dear to me. Um, what else about me? I, I have a few talents. I love writing. I've loved writing since I was a young girl, a little girl. Ever since I could knew what a poem was, I had been writing. So I'm a writer. I create jewelry, such as like these earrings here. Uh, and I call it Love Life Designs because another thing about me is that I love life. Um, I have a website called Love Life by Ella.com, and I'm blogging on the website, so it's my blog, and I'm writing and being who I am on my website. You know, I've like had some growth in the past few years, like from 2014. Um, I think I experienced a awakening because I was like depressed about life and feeling broke and down and feeling like I wasn't doing enough for my family. And I started asking questions, and with what's available in this world, all the information just started coming to me. And
Mhm.
um, it changed my life. It changed my life. Like just asking a question, just being like the lowest that I had ever felt, and just saying, what is going on here? Why am I in this situation? Why is everybody I know in this situation? Like, why is a Metro card, going up 50 cents a problem? Um, and the answers I got brought me to where I am now, where I'm loving life. I'm still asking questions, but I'm not complaining. I'm accepting the things that's going on in the world, and I'm looking at everything as it's moving us forward into a new way of being. And I look at it like it only gets better. No matter how hard it seems, it only gets better. So that's how I look at life, and um, I like to encourage people to do the same. And yet I understand that people are where they are and they need their own sometimes, you know, they need to hit their lowest sometimes to get up. So, you know, I gravitate to talking to people who think like me or who might need me in order for them to be in the place where they're trying to go. So here we are, like that, you know, of like minds. And definitely you got a little bit more time on the ground than I have. So I learned from you. I learned from you. You'll definitely balance out, you know, my language and all that stuff. So I'm here. That's who I am. Ella, I perform. I do music sometimes. I write. You know, you'll learn.
Yeah. So, wow. You know, these conversations, these necessary conversations, I'm definitely someone who's Black, who's proud to be Black, someone who spent time being young, angry, and Black. I had my awakening into Black history and Black culture back in the early 90s. Up to that point, the first 20 years of my life was, living in the darkness, living in the ignorance, of not knowing my history, not knowing my culture. And, just merely existing, like we find many of our people, just existing, not really being free or not believing that they're free to speak their minds and to determine, what kind of lives they want to live for themselves as individuals, what kind of customs and beliefs that they want to begin to institute in their families and in their neighborhoods. And, a lot has been done, to Black people all across this world, and particularly in this country, to rob us of a sense of peoplehood or personhood, to disconnect us from the divine energy, that many people call God or creator or creative intelligence. And the first, I would say, I've been conscious for about, almost 30 years, give or take. I'd say like 29 years, I became conscious like in the summer of 1991 when I first read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And at that time, hip hop was much more conscious and Black power in its fabric, and
than it is now.
than it is now,
Yeah.
And hip hop was on the verge of creating like a revolution in this country at the time. And where I had grown up, using words such as nigga and bitch and, and believing that Black people are just messed up, educational excellence wasn't a thing that, that I even conceived of, that you're supposed to be excellent in school. And, so I had I had an awakening, I became Black conscious, and a lot of Black consciousness then and even now is about white people and the system of racism, the system of white supremacy, and so a lot of when you talk about being conscious or you talk about being woke, a lot of it is focused on white people and what white people or the system has done to us as a Black people. But when we start talking about necessary conversations, after you realize that there's been a system that's held you back and you begin to acknowledge that there was a system and there still is a system, that acknowledgement it's supposed to move you into taking responsibility, over your
Right,
own life.
eventually.
Yeah, now that I'm conscious, now that I'm woke, now I'm supposed to challenge myself to live in that consciousness or live in that state of wokeness, so to speak. Like they say, now that I know better, or now that you know better, you're supposed to strive to do better, you know. And I find that so many of us don't give ourselves the permission to move from being anti what was done to us to being pro how we're supposed to begin to live,
Right. Yeah.
how do we begin to love ourselves, and what does that look like? A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people say, like, um I love myself, but it seems to be very superficial,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really begin to become a practice that that's discernible from the outside, So
Right.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so uh, I met Sister Ella, and I believe that we attracted each other in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because by the time I met Sister Ella, I wasn't young, angry, and black anymore. I was very focused on knowing that I have significant control and power over the decisions that I make, and how
Right.
I can begin to manifest peace and serenity and out of chaos and confusion,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that if I focus on myself, I can begin to navigate through the chaos and confusion that's outside, and I don't have to have my life controlled by that chaos and confusion. I can
Right.
control my thoughts. I can control my emotions, from the inside. So me and Sister Ella, by the time I met Sister Ella, and I met her in a place where it was very much focused on a lot
Yeah.
of what white people have done and what they
Yes.
are doing,
Ooh,
you know.
them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Pointing the
So,
finger.
yeah. So, Sister Ella, can I'm always amazed by how you got to the point of focusing on, loving yourself and focusing on the power that you had to dictate your own life versus, you know, being brought into a world that was very much dealing with the system of racism and, white supremacy and injustice, which is a real system,
Right. Yeah.
but coming so quickly. It took me about 15 years to
Mm-hmm.
really begin to focus on myself versus focusing on them and what they're doing, or focusing on our people. If y'all would just wake up, we could
Mm-hmm.
do, then we can have a greater say so. And, if y'all don't wake up, something's wrong with y'all. And, until, before finally saying, yo, well, what if they never wake up?
Mm-hmm.
Are you just going to be
And now
stuck sitting on the
15 years.
sidelines? It took me about 15 years to get there. And then when I met you, when you told me a little bit of your story, which I hope that you'll go over,
Mm-hmm.
somewhat, it didn't take you as long to navigate through the natural bitterness, angry, and bitterness that comes when you begin to know that there was a system, a real system that was put in effect to knock us down as a people.
Yeah. Well, I didn't I mean I got to that place of being angry, like you said, you wasn't at that place where we met. I was leaving
Mm-hmm.
that place. And I was probably in that place for maybe a year and a half, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
let's see, yeah, maybe a year and a half, going on 2 years, and slowly moving out. I had gotten what I asked for. I asked for information. I asked for who am I, what is my history, besides just, you know, just being black because I was told that I was. I would never, I would always feel a way about saying that I'm black without knowing um, without actually knowing my history, right? And not saying that I'm not Black because of how I look, but what does being Black mean? I always,
Mm-hmm.
I always wonder. I've never just like signed on to saying that because I didn't know what that meant. If you don't know where you come from, if you don't know your ancestors, or if the story is that they were taken from somewhere and we were all separated at some point and we don't know our culture and our history, you know, what the country that we come from, if that was the story, then really who am I really? Like what is my culture? You know, and that those were always the questions that I had. Um, and so even like when you're filling out forms and it's asking your nationality, and I'm like, all we get is like colors. And I'm like, is this a trap? Like, you know, just always questioning things. So I always question things. Um, but you know, it was just in my mind. It was just in my head. I never really came outward and said I was in the, like when I was in a place where I desired this, like I need to know this, like this is I'm missing, it's lacking, and it's a problem. And when I realized that, it had all to do with money, you know. So like just being in the at that, like money is what led me to feeling like it was detrimental, you know, for me to know this stuff, because I just, again, like I said earlier, I was like, basically, why am I broke and why is everybody I know broke? You know, the people that's close to me. Why can't I call, you know, somebody and be like, yo, I need $10,000, like, you know, somebody who loves me, and then they break it off. Like, why don't I have that? Why don't we have that? And so when I did I started researching, and I went into like the Federal Reserve and all of the information, you know, YouTube videos and all the so-called conspiracies, you know, just was opened up to me, and it was so much information within that, so many different avenues to go down, and information to gather and process and sort through what's real and what's not, you know. And of course, learning that a lot of the things that I've been taught and believed growing up, you know, wasn't true. Um, Let me see, for instance, I mean, I think I already knew about Christopher Columbus and stuff like that, but it was just like, um, it was just a lot of information, you know, that I was learning, and it was like everything was like, whoa, wow, like my mind was constantly blown. Um, and then it led me into seeing people who I had never seen before, listening to um, what did you call that? Like watching documentaries and listening to people speaking. Like Dr. Umar was one of the first people that I started to really listen to, and he was really about the education system. Um, and then I met brother Born Master Allah, and he was teaching Black biology. I met him through uh, another brother, you know, Mark, who I met at Dr. Umar's event. And it just was like I just kept meeting people and being open to more and more and more information. So I appreciate the places where I was, um, where people were angry, and I was
Mm.
angry, and it was a lot of talk about them, and they want us, and they want us to be like this, and that they set us up, you know. And then I was coming home telling my children, you know, I was scaring the crap out of them, telling them how we all set up to fail, you know, and school ain't really teaching you shit, you know, that they should be teaching you. And I mean, it's been so much changing the way I was eating, and then like preaching about food. I wrote a book, um, and at that point, I became very passionate about telling people, like you said, like, you need to wake up, like telling people, like, listen, you don't know what's going on, and like, y'all, you worried about this, but they over here, killing us and killing us through the food, and just, and I was confident in what I was learning, because I feel like now I had information and I wasn't ignorant. And at the same time, I was fearful because of the things that I learned. And I was fearful for my family. I was fearful for my children. And I was ready to move to Canada. Like I wanted I wanted to like leave it. I mean, I had, it was a lot going on up here in that 2-year window of like paranoia. I mean, I was crying like when Ebola came out, whatever. When Ebola dropped like an album. I was like, seeing how I think at that time, I was researching on how basically the media takes things out of proportion. So I'm listening and I'm watching things about how the media takes things out of proportion. And then I'm looking at like Ebola and coming to America. And I just was like, I remember one day I called my father and I was crying because I was like, what are we gonna do? Like, what can we do with what's going on in this world? It's too much. So I didn't like feeling like that. I didn't like feeling paranoid. I didn't like feeling prideful and scared at the same time. And I think my discomfort with that brought on more asking, how can I find my power in my life? How can I find my power in life? Because now I want to know I wanted to know where I came from, as far as my ancestry. But how can I find out my power as an individual? And because I'm scared, and I feel like as strong as I am as a melanated Black woman, with, kin to the sun and all of this, and Egypt and Kemet, where's my power? Because as far as I know, I'm still under this government who doesn't care about me, people that look like me, or my children. And with that asking, it moved me into spiritual information began to come to me, because there's also a lot of spiritual information within what I was learning. You're learning about ancient Egypt, and you learn about spiritual things. So when that opened up for me, it was another way. It was like another path. So the same way I went on a path of knowledge of self through, Black power, I went down a path of knowledge of self through spirit. And that felt better. It felt better than being angry at people for manipulating my life. It felt like more control over my life. It felt like I really knew where I came from, beyond my color, beyond a country, beyond whatever culture is, where I am from, beyond that. It connected me to that. And that was something that I really couldn't find in books. It was inside of me. That made all of the sense. What I was finding out about spirit, it made more sense than anything I could read, anything that I could be taught, because it was already inside of me. So it made me feel better about life. It made me feel like I had more control over my life. And, I'm in the same physical place. I live in the same place. I don't know if I said I'm from Brooklyn. I'm still in the same apartment in the projects, but I feel priceless. People say they feel like $1 billion. I feel infinite. And that's where I am right now. So I just couldn't stay there. Like, how did I move out of that? I didn't want to feel like what that made me feel like. It felt like it was cousin to feeling um depleted, feeling like I was poor, broke. Now I feel attacked. I feel paranoid. The government, is trying to get me or whatever. So it felt the same. It felt like the same worry, the same, and I didn't want to feel like that. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to feel what happy felt like without anything. Also,
Mm-hmm.
I chose that.
You know, there's a and listening to you talk, there's certain phrases that are just thrown out there loosely that I don't think people really have explored what these phrases mean, or what these phrases um, are foundations for greater discovery, for individuals to embark on. Like when a lot of times people say knowledge of self, that you got knowledge of self. And if you, depending upon what spiritual, cultural um, totem or group think that's using that phrase, knowledge of self will mean different things,
Right, right.
Um, from what I've found, knowledge of self, the way it's customarily looked upon is a lot of times it tends to be about negativity or negative things that have been done. You got to know your history. You got to know what they did to you. You got to know the enemy. People, I've heard all of these phrases. You got to know the enemy, in order to be free. Um, and I've lived long enough. And I used to think, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I used to be this young, angry, and black dude who purposefully wore a chip on my shoulder. And I felt that the more angry I was, the more loyal I was being. The more loyal I was being to those who went before us, the ones that we talk about, the ones who fought and died, to get us free. Um, and the more loyal I felt like I was being to those who are amongst us, who are living in non-time, and we believe that they don't know. They don't know the things that we know. So I remember, when it really became clear to me, I remember going into a donut shop, and this young lady came up to the counter. She was having a great day. The sun was shining. She had this beautiful smile on her face. And she was like, "Good morning. What can I do for you today?" And here I come up here with all of this angriness and bitterness I'm carrying for the hundreds of years of oppression and injustices. And I'm like looking at her like, "Good morning? What you mean good morning? Don't you know that?" You know?
You said that.
And yeah, what you mean good
Wow.
morning? What's good about this morning? Don't you know what they're doing what they've done to our people, what they're doing to our people? And it was around, this was about, like I said, this is about 15 years ago. This is when I began to reach the limits of how effective are we being, Um, we gotta know the enemy. But how can you know the enemy if you don't know yourself? You know, if you don't know yourself, how could you determine who is the enemy of self? And I started, beginning to question, that there was all of these bigoted camps. It was, the United States of America and white people who are partial, to the flag and white, American nationalism or Eurocentric nationalism, this is the greatest country on this earth. And if you can't live here or you don't like it here, then you need to leave, Then you had breakout groups. You had groups that, you know, came up in response to the injustices, and they began to form uh, breakout groups of their own, you know, that 9 times out of 10, a lot of times are just as bigoted in some ways as you know, the groups that they are against, you know. So, and some groups would be offended even by us talking about we black people, you know. What do
Right.
you
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
You ain't black. You know, we ain't black. Black is a color. You ain't no crayon, you know. You have all of these like groups that have certain customs and certain beliefs, you know, but a lot of times those customs and beliefs, again, they tend to focus on, you know, living in reaction to what somebody else has done or what somebody else is doing. But a lot of times those groups haven't given themselves the type of permission to really discover who you are and who
As
you
an
have been
individual.
born or birthed or created to be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge of self to me at this point is is a lifelong journey, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge of self is focusing on becoming on knowing yourself and who you are and what your passions are, what your gifts, what your talents are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only, you know, the system of white supremacy and racism and white skin privilege that has kept us from knowing ourselves, but upon us now being free, those of us who are conscious and say that, yo, we're not living down to the narrative of us just being niggas and bitches and thugs and criminals and former slaves and second-class citizens. Okay, you've declared your freedom from that lowly conception of yourself, but now who are you? You know,
Mm-hmm.
who are you? You know, and what responsibility are you willing to take to decide who you are in the light of freedom, in the light of love now that you've declared for yourself? Are you courageous enough to now to begin to determine who you are and what you have to offer to yourself first, you know, and then to other people amongst you? Or are you going to accept another form of indoctrination and enslavement, to be down with a camp outside of your original enslavement, you know, to where there's some big, you know, boss at the top level and you're just a rank and file member, you know, and in order for you to be in good standing, now you have to put on a particular style of dress. You have to adopt a particular way of speaking and acting. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
um, there are, as you said, and I want to pass it back to you, there are many paths and pathways that have been lived on this earth for great, that help individuals to reach higher levels of expression, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as men, as women, you know, that help them to become fulfilled, you know. And all of the paths that are out there to be explored are valid paths, you know, that you could take advantage of. And you shouldn't let anyone tell you or decide for you what path it is that you need to be taking, you know, for you to learn how to express yourself in this life that you was gifted, you know, that you should be able to have a strong liberty as an individual, you know, to decide who I am, you know, at this point. I hope I'm not going off too far, but I know you'll bring me back, you know. But
No,
these are
we're
some of
sticking to it.
mm-hmm,
Knowledge of self.
mm-hmm,
I mean, I'm realizing lately that, you know, the self is, you know, I believe that I'm a spiritual being and I'm
mm-hmm,
here living and I'm having a human experience. Um,
mm-hmm.
that's what I believe in, and at a certain level, that's what I know, you know, and I can't prove that to anybody who doesn't believe it. So I'm not gonna try, but that's what I'm standing on for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
with that, when I do say myself, that's the part, the self is the part of me that now holds these beliefs and holds what it is that I know and creates um, a way of being to express that. And that's what the self is. So I think that, like you said, it's an ongoing journey knowing yourself. It's a place where I feel that, and I'm excited about never knowing enough, because then that just shows me, like I said earlier, that I'm infinite. It's so much to know about myself and who I am, holding, bringing along who I was, adding on who I am presently, and who I'm moving towards being. That is all me. And the knowledge will accumulate as my experience goes on in this life, because I realize, as I do observe myself and do inner work, how we always talk about, um, that I can speak about myself feeling a way that I would like not to feel, like a feeling of being annoyed, like I'm working and I'm supervising on my job, and I have someone who's doing something and they're not basically following the way that they're supposed, what they're supposed to do, their duties, and then I'm annoyed by that fact. And I've gotten better at it, not letting what other people do affect me, as much as possible. But the attitude that I have sometimes, like, and it's all me because I'm not in front of that person, so I get to tweak how I speak to them before it gets to them. You know what I mean? Um, but the attitude that I have towards it is like, and we're working from home, right? So I'm looking at the email and then I'm like, what? Oh, she thinks she's funny, and then I'm like, no, like why you gotta feel like that, sis? And I'm talking to myself, like why is this affecting you? Like, like you have this, it's my ego, like, oh, she thinks she's funny. All right. Like, regardless of what she thinks or what her intentions are, it shouldn't, like, the way that I feel about it is I'm watching myself and I'm saying, like, calm down, like, approach this different. You don't have to take this personal. So that's me and myself. And I'm having this
Mhm.
conversation with me about my behavior, and I'm observing myself. And yet it would seem to us that I'm right here, So how can I observe myself if I am that? So I realize that the self is something that we can either align with or something that we could be a little bit distant from. We have to get to know who we are on a greater scale so that we can affect the self that we want to be in the way that we want to affect it. So by me observing myself and my behavior as I deal with people and I deal with situations, I'm able to tweak things that I don't like that I do. Just like we try to do with children, but we don't realize they have a self with themselves as well, but we think that we do it all with them, but just like as a child, you would be like, sit up straight. Why are you eating your food like that? Why are you doing, why are you talking to me like that? We have to check ourselves. Check yourself. So like you said, knowledge of self is an ongoing journey, and it's not only knowledge of self, but it's also you understanding that you are creating yourself, and then you would have to have knowledge of that creation. What am I putting into me? What am I putting into this me that I'm expressing to the world? I'm an expression. So
Mm-hmm.
I get to choose how I express myself.
That's right. That's right.
That's knowledge of self to me.
Definitely, definitely, and it's an ongoing journey. And human beings, it has to be stated, um, a lot of times we look at ourselves as limited. You know, you hear people talking about life is a bitch, and then you die, and
Mm-hmm.
you gotta die from something. You know, and it's so messed up out of here. It's so messed up out here that I'm gonna have a little bit of fun before I go. You know,
Mm.
and 9 times out of 10, the fun that they're talking about is engaging in risky behavior, and risky habits, that, will tend to cut short their life and stop them from being able to really live long enough and to be able to explore what this life is really about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we got to cut through so much rubbish and trash and garbage and darkness, um, in order to find ourselves a lot of times. And it reminds me of Tupac and his poem, The Rose That Grew from Concrete, you know? Um, and talking about him finding himself and growing up through the craziest of environments, and people looking at him like, yo, you look messed up, man. What's up with your pedals and what's up with your broken stems and all that? And he like, yo, look what I had to come up through, you
Mm.
know and so many of us, you know the environments that we've had to live under, there is an injustice there. And what makes it so bad is that these environments were created to stop us from being able to create an artificial order, pecking order. And I really don't want to go back there, but this is where I'm being led to talk about just briefly. And I just want to hit this and move back into the light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there has been an artificial pecking order created on this planet where where the Most High God has been supplanted by, you know, earthly beings who want to be God besides the Most High God. The creative, we were born in love and truth, but
Mm-hmm.
there have been people who have lived and they have passed the baton to people who are still living, who want to keep the status quo of white on top, black on bottom, and everybody else in between, to create a social, political, economic pecking order that black people find themselves 9 times out of 10, you at the bottom, and you don't have no say so, you know. Um, as black people, you're in the position of being the little kid in your mother's and father's house, and being told to go to your room or don't be out here trying to get grown folks conversations.
Mm.
You
That's
don't have no
exactly.
power in this house. You got to do what I say. You got to be in the house when I tell you to be in here. You got to do what I say so in the house, and you don't have no say so. And if you don't want to abide by my rules, then you got to get out of here. And it
Mm-hmm.
kind of sounds like the white racist saying, if you don't like America, then you need to get out of here. It kind of sounds the same way. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
expected, as a black person, you're expected to live in America in the same position as you was when you was in your parents' house, to be seen and not heard. You don't get no say so. You should feel lucky that we even let you stay there,
Mm-hmm.
basically, a lot of times. Um, but once you and that's the reality, and that had to be said.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get to the point where you begin to realize and know that you are a spiritual being, you know, that you do have a divine or connect. You was created for a specific purpose. And that purpose is not to suffer. That purpose is not to just, um, you know, if you suffer good enough, then, you know, maybe you go to heaven when you die, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see other people who are not living like that, you know.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, you begin to question, well, yo, why do I need to just suffer till I die? And you got other people who are actually enjoying themselves while they're here, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I really feel like some of us as individuals, you know, for those who are still in their angry stage, you know, to those who are just now waking up to the fact that there has been a system and that there are injustices and there are impediments and boundaries in front of you to stop you from choosing a path of your own, whatever that path is, a path that speaks to what you need, you know. It may be a path that nobody else agrees with, but it's a path that speaks to your heart. You know, the path might be called the Gospels. You know, the path might be called, you know, 120 lessons. You know, becoming a 5%er. It may be, you know, more is science. Whatever that path is, I feel like there's a path for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to find themselves and free themselves and get them on the journey of being able to express themselves beyond just feeling like they're just a victim, you know? And I don't want to mess with anybody else's journey at this point. I don't want to tell you, you know,
This
that
is what you need to
yo, you
do.
can't call yourself black, man. Black is a crayon. Yo, where's black land? Tell me where black land is at.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to, you know, micromanage and tell anybody else what they should be doing. You
Right.
know, I would like to tell them that, yo, you are better, way better than you may have been tricked into believing, that you
Mm-hmm.
have love and light, you know, that your body is just a vehicle or a vessel for a wonderful power, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that animates that body, that makes you a child of the Most High, if you will, or a son or a daughter of creative intelligence, whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm. And
And
that could still be too much.
and that could be too much. That could be too much. And this is why we come back to me and you having necessary conversations to
Mm-hmm.
where instead of me feeling like, you know, my life is not going to be justified if I don't have 10,000 people following me. You know, if I'm not able to convince people to see things the way I see them and
Mm-hmm.
be willing to follow behind me, you know, no, that's not what's going to justify my life. What's going to justify my life is me knowing that my life is mine to justify in whatever way I choose or decide to justify it, you know?
Right.
And you know, I can't have this conversation with everybody because everybody's not ready to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But these conversations need to be had with people who understand and can share energy in building a conversation as
Right.
such.
And
And
an
this is where,
understanding.
yeah, yeah, because we have a like mind or because it might not necessarily be where we agree with everything, but some of the basics that we agree on is that we are not here to suffer. We are here to find joy, contentment. You know, we are here to love ourselves and overflow that love to whoever, you know, whoever wants to partake of that love. And if you don't want to partake of that love, then that's your right, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to fight you and I'm not gonna let you fight me, you know, and take
Right.
me what I decide. So I said a lot, sis. So I want you to do
No,
that.
you said something that made me smile because you said like you went over different religions or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
I just like at some point in my when I was learning, you know, And I was asking a question. Like I went to this meeting, and it was called, I think it was called Educating Us at that time. With Q Butter. I got a name drop because it's just people who came in my life that really, they
Definitely.
were there when I needed them,
Name drop,
And
and talk about whatever conception y'all was on at that time,
yeah, yeah. So
Pan-Africanism or, whatever it was, it was necessary for you at the time. So
yeah,
definitely name drop.
yeah. So I met Q Butter through Mark McPhee. And it was the first time that I had been, like, besides going to Dr. Umar's events, it's the first time that I had been to a, Black conscious, gathering around people who, like, was, on a path to, knowing themselves. And, so it was different people on a panel, and we had an opportunity to ask questions, and I raised my hand and I was like, I need something, a book, a class, because I want to know, like, I want to know what is the way, like, give me a way, right, that I'm supposed to be. Basically, I was asking, like, a way that I'm supposed to be as a Black woman, African descendant, melanated being, like, whatever it is that you guys are saying that I am, that we are. Where is the blueprint, right? Where is the guide to that? Like, my mother will always say growing up, like, I never had they never had a book to tell me what to do. She will always say that. But I'm like, where is the book that we all could give out this book and say how we supposed to do it? So one of the people on the stage was Minister, I think his name is Hafiz or something, but he recently passed away. And he was a Muslim, one of the head of the Muslim in Brooklyn or something. I don't know the names, like how to say what his title was, but he was a well-known leader in the Nation of Islam. And he said,
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
So he said that is the way. Like the Nation of Islam, that's the way, right? And he was on the stage way over there, and I was in the audience, and he said that, and and a couple of people said different things, but I remember asking that question, and I remember him saying that was the way. So then I was like, I gotta be a Muslim. And I'm like, well, and I have children, like I said, I'm a mother. I have 6 children, 5 natural from me, and 1 is my son, who I raised I knew him since he was 5 years old. So I was like, so how am I gonna be a Muslim? Because then that means that I gotta marry a Muslim guy, and I gotta like wrap my head up or something, like, just say a little like superficial thing. And I didn't know if I was interested in doing that, like going into that religion. And I don't know if it was before I got there that I like studied Buddhism. And then throughout the time I was looking into the Moors, what they believe and how you could become a Moor. And then I was learning some things about Israelites, and I didn't think I wanted to be an Israelite either. I think I was more interested in Buddhism, or being a Moor, or accepting that I am a Moor, right? So it was so many things that I had to choose from. Like, I could do this, that, and I kind of based it on if it was a man around me who like was interested in me and I was interested in him, and he was one of those things that I would have probably really like dove into having that, because I really wanted culture. I wanted culture. I wanted something to call my own, just not fried chicken and macaroni and cheese and you know and whatever they could get from the pig. You know, I wanted something that was rooted in a rich culture, and I didn't believe that that was what I came from. So I was I was looking around like what can I grab onto and become and make this what my family. And at that time I was with my living with my children's father, and I was really doing all of that soul searching myself, and he was doing his own thing, and we weren't coming together on how we were going to live our life moving forward. It was all me going on this path, and I was doing it without him. So I just was always picturing like, how can I now transition my family to be a part of this religion or this belief system? How can I do that successfully, being in a situation that I was in? So fortunately, I I didn't have the opportunity, or at least I didn't see the opportunity um, to kind of dive into a different lifestyle as far as religion or whatever belief system. And then,
Mhm.
then the spirituality, came through, which was like, at this point, I don't have to sign on to anything. What I sign on into is just that, um, like I said, I'm a spiritual being. I'm here living this experience, and I can choose to do whatever I want with it. Just the fact
Mhm.
that I had all of those different things to choose from, that's choosing a lifestyle, like, okay, well, if you go over here, then this is how they basically dress, this is how they speak, this is what they eat when they wake up in the morning, this is they fast at this holiday. It's all different roles in these different religions, and and it's life period, just showing you that, hey, you can live life however you choose to. So it made me laugh, because I was really open at that time to be like a part of something. Like, I wanted to be a part of something. I wanted to join on. I wanted to be in your crew. I wanted to be in your dance crew, and do what you do, because I felt like I didn't have anything to hold on to, coming from where I came from. But now I don't believe that. I believe that what I do have is culture. I feel like no one has lived, no other race, if we as Black people or African descendants or Moors or whatever, people who basically don't know exactly who they are derived from, right? We don't have the paperwork, we were stolen and lied to and all of that. So I think that that itself is a part of who we are. It is who we are. We were people who had this experience as a whole, and we got to experience how it is when you take away everything that you think makes a person who they are. You take away their way of life. You take away where they came from, so they don't know where they from. You take away how they eat. You take away their language. You take away their customs. You take away the God that they believe in. You take away the way, like I said, their customs, the way they dress, whatever. You take away their names, down to their names. That's everything that we think makes us who we are as people. Like,
Yeah.
oh, who are you? Well, I'm a Black woman, and I'm a Christian, and I'm from, you know, I'm from wherever, and this is how we do. This is what we do,
Yeah.
and this defines who I am.
And
So
and on top of that, just to throw this in there right quick, sis, I'm sorry to cut you off,
that's
but
okay.
I don't want to lose it. And then on top of that, to cover up your tracks, it's not only that you did all of those things and stole all of those foundations and abilities, and which gives you the power to reason, which gives you the power of having a pride and a dignity and a self-respect. So you stole all of those
All
things,
of that.
but
Hmm.
on top of that, you cover up your tracks. You do everything that you can to stop us from seeing or knowing what you did, so that we begin to look at ourselves as, you know, just people who don't work, who don't have any worthiness, or who don't matter, or just can't get right. You know, it's our fault. It's
Right.
our fault that Black men and Black women, you know, have such an enmity and bitterness between one another. It's our fault that, you know, wherever you go in the Black neighborhoods, there's so much chaos and confusion and parasitical behavior. You know, people committing acts of violence and all of these things on each other without knowing that all of these things was done systematically to rob you of the things that you needed to be, you know, great. Without you knowing what happened, then you look at yourself, you begin to hate yourself, and you begin to hate other people who look like you know, because you see the same lack of love that you have in your soul. You see it in ugliness that you feel about yourself. You see it in other people who look like you and who live around you, you know. And so you're not willing to kill yourself, but you'll visit harm and pain on somebody else who looks at you, and it's kind of like killing yourself, you know, at the same time. So I just wanted to throw that part in there because, you know, we suffer from, we have taken on our own victimization. You know, we blame ourselves for the chaos and confusion that exists within our family. You got women blaming men for not being able to be men in the American, you know, under the American standard of what a man is in America. You have Black men blaming Black women, you know, because Black women have decided that, yo, I can't depend upon you, so I got to depend upon myself, you know. So we blaming each other, you know, for what's wrong in our, you know, in our relationships, and not blaming the real source of where this disconnection came from. The people who robbed us from all of these things that you mentioned, you know. And I believe that if we begin to put the blame where it properly belongs, you know, for the chaos and confusion and self-hatred and lack of love that exists in our communities, then we would be free of the burden of looking at ourselves as horrible people. Then we would begin to hopefully, you know, in the light of love and truth, then we would be able to come back together amongst each other and heal these wounds and heal these divisions. So I'm sorry to cut you, sis, but I didn't want to. I just thought that what you were saying was so important. It was what you were saying was so important to talk about all of the things that was taken from us, and also it's very important for us to, you know, the Jews say never forget, never forget. You know, never forget the Holocaust, never forget the persecution that we've suffered as a Jewish people. But when Black people begin to talk about all of the things that we've suffered, you have people saying, oh, that was so long ago, just forget about it and what have you. Yo, we can't forget about it. You know, if we forget about it, then we find ourselves in a strange place, in a strange land, and we got all of these beefs with one another, and we, you know, we can't get along with one another, and we don't know what to do about it, you know?
Well,
So,
that's what I was saying, as far as it
yeah.
being a part of who we are, you know, it's our story. It's our story, you know, so that in itself gives it makes me feel like I'm not as lost as I thought I was. You know, we turn water, you know, into wine, you know, and we created meals out of garbage. You know what I mean? That sustained our lives, that grew us and help us to live. You know, I mean, we suffered as much as you could as a human being. And on top of the lack of knowing who we were, and yet we still, like, we're here, like we're still here. And not only are we still here, but we're growing, and we're we're getting better. You know, we are connecting with ourselves and that part that was so-called taken from us. You know, it's something that I realized recently when it comes to freedom. And, you know, for us to say that, you know, we were freed at a certain point, and, you know, in this country, as from slavery, we were freed. And, you know, what my thinking mind does now with that, knowing about the spirit, us being spiritual beings, is that you cannot, how can you free something that is already free? You're like, you can't give freedom. You can't give something that you never held. Like, you never held my freedom. I was already free. I born free. I'm here. I'm free. I'm a free being on this planet. You can't give freedom, because freedom is not yours to take from anybody, you know. And I know what has been, you know, it's been things said. Kanye said something, you know, that where he said that we chose slavery and things like that. I realized this one time that, you know, I'm grateful for being here, because it's many who have, you know, who jumped off the ship. You know, they did whatever they had to do in order to get out of, you know, what we had been subjected to. And then there's many who fought and died in order for other people to be let, you know, to be free, you know, of what they were subjected to. So, you know, I have to be grateful for all of those choices that my ancestors made, as far as I know, right, in the past, in order to have us sitting here having this conversation about, you know, this necessary conversation about, you know, spirituality and self-development and knowledge of self and all of that. Like, we are at a position to continue to ascend and to grow spiritually, you know, physically, our position in this country, financially, all of that. We're in a position for us to get to a place where we want to get, and we will, because we have a desire to. I believe, like, just like I had a desire to know, coming from where I was in 2014 to how I am now, and the things that I believe now, and how I feel about life. That was a transition for me, and it brought me to a place where I desired to be. So our desires will be met. You know, it's just sometimes we can't see it because we don't believe it, because everything that's happening now feels like it will never come. But it will come, because at some point we were somewhere on a field being whipped, you know, and people think that this is not progress, but and they would say that, oh, we being whipped and we're in slavery in a different way. But I tell you what, I'm not no punk, right? But this life that I'm living right now, I'm grateful for it, because my ancestors suffered what they suffered through and lived what they lived through in order for me to be here now and have the freedom that I had already had, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I just,
I'm accepting this as being a part of who I am, because it is my history. It's a part of my experiences, um, who that made me up into who I am. So
yeah.
being a descendant of slaves and not knowing, or people enslaved people and not knowing my past, is who I am.
Well, well, I mean, I want to backtrack. You said a lot, and there were some things that you said that I want to provide some background for, because I think that it's important. Um, we were held in a system of bondage, and there were many things that happened to force the people who were in control of that system of bondage to let us go, you know, from that system of bondage. you know, quote unquote, you know, you freeing you, you know, quote unquote, as you said. And like you said, you know, it wasn't of their own volition to free you or let you go out of that system of bondage. There was bloodshed and you know, a war and other things that contributed to forcing their hand to let you go. But the thing about it is that all of those things that were stolen that you mentioned, you know, our human dignity, you know, our belief in a higher power, you know, our love and respect between one another as man, as woman, as father, as mother, over a family, all of those things that were stolen to reduce us to the level that we had to be knocked down to so that we could be enslaved and held against our will. When the act of freedom occurred, there was never any reparations. There was never any repair. Repair is the root word of reparations. Reparations goes above and beyond money, but money is a big part of it because 300 to 400, give or take, depending upon what site source you are speaking from. 400 years of unpaid slave labor is what made America such a powerful, great country as it became, and you know, in such a rapid fashion as it did, you know, from the unpaid slave labor of African people, you know. So money is definitely a big part of it, but it goes above and beyond money. How do you give a people back their human dignity? How do you give them back their pride and self-respect? You
can't.
Well, so no doubt. So they didn't free us, or they didn't give back to us what we had before they enslaved us. And on top of that, they have tried to do everything that they can to stop us from healing and repairing ourselves. You know, every time you have a Black man or a Black woman who stands up and tries to help us through that process of healing ourselves, regenerating ourselves, redeeming ourselves as individuals and as members of a family, members of a village, members of a collective. Every time someone or a group of people stand up to try to help us to get into that process of healing, regeneration, and redemption, those people are looked upon as threats to the status quo, to the order of white on top, Black on bottom, and everybody else in between. And that has to be recognized. You know, we've been kept in a perpetual state of, you know, chaos and confusion ever since we were so-called freed in the 1860s. We've had moments of great progress, you know, occur. You know, the period of Reconstruction, which most people don't know about, that happened immediately after the so-called slave trade was over. The period of the 1900s and 1920s, and you had great movements erupt amongst us. But those movements were always, and the leaders of those movements were always vilified, were always slandered, were always portrayed as enemies, and they were either killed, they were either exiled or imprisoned. You know, everything was done to make sure that that process of healing, regeneration, and redemption does not occur for the Black/African people, Moors, whatever you want to call, you know, us, depending upon what perspective you're looking at it. Everything has been done to stop us from being able to go through that period of healing, regeneration, and redemption. And we're still, we're always embattled. We're always embattled. Somebody's trying to mess with us. We have never been left alone to pick up the scraps, pick up the pieces, you know, as a collective, you know, to bring order back to our communities, you
Well,
know,
are you
and we're still
saying,
in the same position today. Go ahead.
are you saying that the efforts of those who have you know those who have made efforts in order to bring us to a place and get back the things that we lost, you're saying that, are you saying that those efforts went like they didn't matter, they didn't make a difference?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm
Okay.
saying I'm stating for the record. I'm stating for the record that the same the children of those who went before, you know, who enacted slavery, who enacted the black codes, who enacted segregation and lynching, you know, and did all of those things back then, they have been succeeded by forces, governmental and private sources, or forces today that still are threatened by us regaining true freedom, you know, freedom and liberty, you know, the freedom to determine for ourselves how we're going to live our lives as individuals and how we're going to live our lives as people, you know, members of a collective, you know. They don't want to see a leadership pop up amongst us that's really going to help us to heal, to regenerate, and to begin to redeem our lives and redeem our communities. So they oppose a Marcus Garvey, they oppose a Frederick Douglass, they oppose Elijah Muhammad or Dr. King or Malcolm. But so I'm not saying that those movements and those pathways to redemption don't matter, because if they didn't matter, then I know I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you.
Right. And
Because,
that's my point.
no, I get your point, but I wanted to flesh it out and add on to your point. So I felt that I needed to say some of these things, just to balance out what what you were saying. And I'm glad that, you know, you said what you said, of course.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we in order for us to be, like you said, like we wouldn't even be talking about it if it didn't make a difference. So these people who came, you know, before us, these leaders that we had, although their lives, you know, were ended because of the movement that they created, they still made a difference for us.
Yeah.
They still brought us to a next level. You know,
Most
they
definitely.
brought us somewhere where we weren't before they came into our lives, you know.
And
So
their legacies are still available to us.
Exactly.
To reconnect to, you know, and if we really want to honor their efforts, we should make the effort to examine many of the pathways and legacies that have been left for us to take advantage of.
And move into another level.
Yeah, those people may be dead, you know, but their legacies are still available, you know, and alive for us to reconnect to.
And that's the thing that we should take into account, is this, like, people, like you said, like it's always been something to stop our growth, right? Systematically, something always, you know, somebody is gonna get killed, somebody, like basically it all ends in death, right? But if people would look at the death, you know, as a another opportunity for to continue to give birth, then, you know, our progress would, you know, would happen much faster. But people are afraid of death, and when they see death, then nobody wants to move forward because, oh, look at what happened to the last guy. And that's what they want us to do. They want us to say, hey, look what happened to the last guy. I'm not doing that, you know. So, but there are people, right? And they don't have to be on stage in front of millions of people. They don't have to be on TV. You know, they could be, there are people like you and people like me, you know, who are showing an example of we can find the, you know, what was taken from us, you know, the dignity and you know, self-respect, you know, for ourselves, and knowing, you know, having confidence in ourselves and who we are. We have that, showing people love in our community, showing each other love, treating each other, you know, again, with love and respect and care and you know, fairness. Like, we do that, you know. So it's not only you and me, it's many others, you know, who's not on this, you know, talking to us right now, who's not having this conversation with us right now, but there are other people who are doing it. So we can't say that all um you know, that we haven't found it yet, because we found it in ourselves, you know. And it might be, and I can't say it's harder for anyone else. It's just that they may not have hit that place yet, like I said earlier, in their lives, to where they start asking the questions and doing the soul searching and the inner work, you know. But we should not take away where we are because of the magnitude of what was done, you know, and still being done to us.
No
But
doubt.
we are, you know, we are powerful, powerful beings, you know, that we live, like we continue to live. People think that you have to, like, again, like what I said before, you think you have to have, like, well, if I don't know my name, I don't, like, it's babies who are thrown in the garbage when they're born, and they have no, you talk about not knowing who they are, just like us. They have no idea who their parents are, what their nationality, their culture. If they have a skin color, they could probably say, oh, well, I look like I'm black, or I look Indian, or I look, but they don't, you know, they, if that child, if that's that child's story, they don't have any history of who they are. But yet we hear stories all the time about children, you know, being found, being adopted. They grow up to be, you know, beautiful people in life, and, you know, helping people, or just being, you know, just being beautiful people. So it's not to say that because we don't know, or we've had these things taken away from us, that we can't, um, you know, be, like, I don't know if to say decent human beings, and, you know, just have, you know, like, be happy, you know, be happy in life. Because I think we can teach the world how to be happy without those things. Um,
Well, you saying, you know, there was something I was gonna say, and I, you know, and I'm gonna connect this to where you're at right now, that I wanted to say earlier, and I kind of digressed from it. Human beings are the only species on this planet who have the power of free will. You know, the power to adapt to any situation or circumstance. You know, as long as they continue to take advantage of their ability to learn, their ability to do better, you know, than what others have done before them, and also to do better than what they have done in their own lives. You know, it's kind of like a conversation we were having a couple of days ago, where I'm coming to appreciate myself. And when I say myself, I'm talking about myself from 20 years ago. You
mhm.
know, I'm revisiting myself. And a lot of times when people think about their past, they just think about the regrets and things that they would change. And a lot of times they don't, because they're so focused on their regrets and the things that they would change, a lot of times they don't focus on the goodness you know, and maybe the gifts and talents that that person exhibits, not only had and exhibited, but projects, you know, your dreams. This is why they tell you to journal. This is why they tell you to write down things down, your goals and stuff of that nature. And I thank God that the creator that as a student, as an author, I have a large body of work, you know, of unfinished books and all types of projects that I'm dusting off. And I'm like looking at that young brother from years ago that had good dreams, good hopes and strength, but also had fears and doubts that kind of, you know, maybe got in the way of him expressing himself to the top level that he could express himself at that time, because he was a little fearful of what his peers would think. You know, who are you to write a book? Who are you to be standing up in the community and talking about we need to come together and all of that? And I did these things in my youth, in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s, really in my 20s and my 30s particularly. And, you know, I don't have those fears that I had at that time. I don't have those doubts. You know, now I have more of the confidence and the courage that I exhibited at that time, minus the doubts and the fears of, you know, how I was going to be received by family. You know, my family ain't really paying attention to what I'm doing. Don't they see how important what I'm doing is? Mm-hmm. You know, or my loved ones, and they're not recognizing what I'm trying to do. And I let things like that, you know, stop me from just going full all out, you know, to really accentuate and focus on the good. And now I'm like, look, I'm looking back, I'm coming to the point where I'm like, yo, I got you. Yo, thank you. I'm thanking myself, you know, not myself now. I'm thanking myself now too, but even more so, I'm thanking my former self for making the efforts that he made that positioned me to take advantage of the strength and the hope that he had. And now I'm talking, like you was talking about earlier, talking to myself. Now I'm talking to myself, but not just talking to myself, even though I do that sometimes, you know. And yo, most people will be lying if they say they don't talk to themselves sometimes. Sometimes I'm the only one that I have around me, you know, to calm me down or to tell me to chill out. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's what I was saying earlier.
I talk to myself. Yeah. But I'm talking to my former self and saying, yo, I got you. It's not over. I thank you for what you did. I thank you for having the courage and the strength to provide the foundation that I'm standing on today, you know? So I just say, sis, I'm with you. And we've recognized, and this is where this whole format of necessary conversations comes in, because instead of us allowing ourselves to get dominated by how dark and decadent and chaotic and poisonous and corrupted this world has become, this world also has pathways to love and joy and the liberty of higher expression is all here. But people, individuals who have gone through that process, like you said, of inner work and knowing that we have survived and knowing that a lot of times to appreciate the light and love, you have to go through those periods of darkness and pain and suffering to appreciate the love and the light. So now those of us who are on the other side of pain and suffering, you know, it's upon us to live lives of free expression, of higher capabilities, of compassion and empathy, love and respect, mercy, you know, for other people who are still stuck in those periods, you know. But by the same token, we should never feel that, you know, our lives should be constrained by duty to them, you know, to those who are stuck or who are choosing to be stuck. You know, our lives are not to be constrained by, yo, we got to sacrifice our lives for other people. It's not about sacrifice. It's about overflow. It's about, you know, being the best person that you can be so that you can show that there is an opportunity for people to be at their best, you know, and that's how you help someone who's stuck. You know, the way we was talking about the other day, like when you have a baby and you got children. I have a son. I didn't explain to my son or you know, I didn't explain to him how to walk, you know, and he wouldn't have understood it if I tried to explain to him how to walk. You know, I just performed a higher capability of the human body in front of him. And as he saw myself and saw his mom and saw other people walking, you know, he desired, well, I want to do that too, you know. I want to walk. It wasn't like a mental conception that he had to process through before he started trying. You know, he just saw, you know, kids imitate what they see adults do, you know.
Right. And
So
then our body is built to do it. And that's
mhm.
even, you know, not to simplify it, but it's, you know, we dealing with spirit, you know, we have innate capabilities, you know, and we put too much of our you know, about basically we give away too much of our power. You know, again, it's that word power. I didn't want to use that word again, but I have a lack of words. But we just put too much, we just give too much away, not understanding, you know, the innate part of us and not understanding the spiritual, you know, guidance that we have to lead ourselves just in case we do become lost or we are lost. You know, so speaking of people, you know, being stuck, you know, in where they are and seeming us, you know, we're on the outside looking in as, oh, they don't, you know, they're not, they should be doing this, or, you know, they shouldn't keep on living their life that way. You know, we have to, we don't have to, right? We don't have to ever do anything, but us being people who care about the well-being of others and point blank, you know, when we can't do it, when we can't reach in and do like that and, you know, fix and tie all the strings and untie the knots and get out the blockages and all that stuff, you know, we have to understand that they have their own guidance and their own their innate capabilities and things things, entities and powers working in their favor, because it's not only if we want to see people be great, you know, then you don't think that it's the what's beyond our sight, entities, you know, spirit, ancestors, all of that looking to us saying, I want you to, they want us to be great too. So what can we do? Like, we're doing what we can on in our human form to help to inspire people just by being who we are. I'm gonna just walk down this block and I'm sure somebody's gonna get inspired, you know, in whatever way. They might look at my hair and be like, you know what? They've been burning their scalp for 50 years, and you know what? I think I want to go natural. Like, you don't know, you know, what people see in you, you know, when you're exuding the light that you are. And the way that we want to see people be great, we have a whole, we have spirit, we have, I mean, entities that we cannot see or hear right now while we're speaking, who wants us to be even greater. You and me right here, right now, while we're speaking. So what do you think the people that we're concerned about and the people that we think, you know, we want them to just come and be with us and have these conversations that we're having? Oh, they have it. They have it. They just have to put themselves in a place and ask the questions that we begin to ask and do the inner work, and not on a level where you know, because now we know we're doing the inner work. When we first started doing it, we didn't know that's what we were doing. We just wanted more. We wanted better. So we have to understand that. And we had help. We had help, and not from the people that we could see. We had guidance. Pam, Ella, look this up, call this person, walk down this block. So when we take into account that it's not just us that has that's in the place, so we want everybody to be great, we want to see people do better, but it's all type of forces that's working for that to happen for the people that we want to encourage, who's inspiring us right now at this very moment while we are speaking, because we want to share this. So that's the greater, when we talk about not talking about them and what people put in place that is true and facts, how the system is set up and all of that. We have to take into account the higher system. It's a system that's way beyond that system. And that's why 2020 right now, what's happening right now, that system is showing itself more than ever before, because that other system that's been holding people down is not going to continue to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to continue to do that because it's been happening too long. So the higher system, spirit, God, the universe, all of that is working. It's working harder than anybody think they working to get things in order.
No doubt. And we just got to, let go of our bondage, our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual bondage that we have submitted to, and begin to open up to higher possibilities. There's been a lot of, as you were talking, we're taking advantage of necessary conversations of the past, that some of the great people that we love and respect, they had necessary conversations as well.
Right.
People used to say about, my spiritual father, Brother Malcolm X, Minister Malcolm X, they used to say that he was ahead of his time. He was so, he was ahead of his time. His mind, his thought process was so above and beyond. He had necessary conversations that he knew he had to get this information out. He had to get these thoughts out, because he with the faith that there was going to be people who came behind him,
Right.
even if those people, weren't to be born for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years. If
Exactly.
I have these necessary conversations and I document my work, and other people are able to pick up on my life and my times and my thought process, they will be able to benefit from my life force, from my life energy. And this is the type of faith that we are exhibiting at this point, to have these necessary conversations amongst each other, for, who knows, where this energy is going to end up, So we just gotta have faith, and we gotta have, joy. Where's that joy gonna come from? That joy is gonna come from, the highest joy that I believe is possible is when you have a dream or you have a plan, and you break that plan down into steps to be taken, and you take those steps and you manifest your dream into the form of a book, or into the form of some type of creative implement. Like the chair that I'm sitting on was born in somebody's mind, and they thought of, wouldn't it be dope if we had something, that people could sit on and be relaxed and whatever. And they, with faith, they began to do things and manipulate wood and iron and other things and created chairs.
Right.
Everything that we can basically see came out of somebody's mind, and I'm really, we need, when we talk about joy, it's not no kumbaya, something, you on an acid trip, or you high, or you drunk or something, and you're forgetting about the fact that there's real challenges and threats in the world. No, we're talking about a joy of knowing that I can choose my thoughts. I can choose the way I spend my time and the actions that I commit myself to and the projects of my own that will, justify, my time being spent on this earth, by using my talents and using my skills to make it a little bit better for myself and for other people coming behind me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the type of joy, when you know that you can do that and you begin to do that, that joy is more natural than any, artificial high that you can, participate in, because most artificial highs have a downside or a repercussion. You know what I mean? But this type of joy that we're talking about, there is no downside. There is no negative repercussion when you begin to tap into your own creative genius and begin to express yourself on that level.
And regardless of whatever the situation is, this year, and I think we about to come to a close, Brother Mike, but this year has shown people that sometimes, you have plans, right? Sometimes you have goals and you had them written down, for what you was going to do for 2020, right? But then 2020 came and none of that stuff popped off the way you thought it was going to pop off, but that you being, of that source and being part of, the full, creator, you also have the ability to, just because that didn't happen and that didn't manifest the way that you thought it would, still now, being a creative being, coming up with another way to express yourself as a creator. So, all what you were saying, manifestation is an expression, of the thoughts, an expression of your creativity, coming out into form, so sometimes the things that, sometimes people bank on the joy of whatever it is that they know that they can do. And sometimes you can't do that, they like, if you've been playing basketball all your life and next thing you know, you hurt your knee or whatever it is and you can't play the way that you used to anymore. Your joy should not be taken away because you can no longer express yourself in that way. So just knowing, for me, my joy comes in the knowing that regardless of the situation, that I can still express myself. Just like someone who has, going to prison, we're talking about people being, freedom getting taken away. They realize that freedom is not a physical thing. It's a thing in the mind. So you can free your mind. You can take yourself to places where you can't physically take your body. So joy is in the knowing of that. Like, no matter what happens, I'm still going to be good. I'm still going to be in a place of creating and expressing myself. Take arms, legs, all of that. Like, people have gone through whatever we can imagine in the human body can experience. People who have gone to war and lost all their limbs, they're still here expressing themselves. I've seen stories of people, they've gotten married, they have children, or they're still, they go around and they speak to people and tell them how they can feel better about life and how they can still continue to live regardless of whether you or not you have no arms. Freaking, they got burned, they don't have no face, like they features are damn near gone, but they still living and still kicking. They can't do what they used to do because of the situation that happened, because of the circumstances that life brought to them, but yet they still have a way to express themselves. So that's where I find joy at, knowing that regardless of anything that can happen, because this year right here shows you do not know what's coming. Sometimes you don't know. You could kind of feel, but you just don't know. But you know what? You can still be in a position of expressing yourself because that's what we're here to do.
On that note, sis, time check. Where we at?
It's 1:58.
1:58. So, for everybody that's been, listening, up to this point, me and Sister Ella is my sister for real. And you know, we found each other on this journey, you know, of higher expressions, you know, and I definitely appreciate Sister Ella very, very much. And every time that we talk, we have these deep, long conversations, you
Yeah,
know, and we'll be on the phone sometimes 3 hours, you know, and we always going deep on some topic or another. And this is kind of, you know, and we used to also, Sister Ella was, when I had my podcast back in 2018, in the spring to the summer of 2018, I did a podcast called The Wake Up Project with BruthaMikeX. And Sister Ella was a lot of times, you know, my partner and co-anchor, you know, so to speak, on that show. So we've wanted to begin to podcast again, and this Zoom technology that we're using has given us an opportunity for her to be where she's at and for me to be where I'm at, and for us to have some of these necessary conversations in a way, and using a vehicle or platform to where we want to invite other people to participate, to listen to our conversations, and maybe even you can suggest topics and things of that matter that you would like for us to address, you know, as we move along. We may even make room for, you know, to have a guest or two every now and then, you know, with some of the things that we talked about. So we're going to be having these necessary conversations into the future. And I really wanted us, and the time got away from us because we were saying before we got on, like, oh, we just going to go for about an hour. You know, yeah, right. I should have known that was going to happen. But I did, Sister Ella did touch on you know, the whole quarantine and the pandemic, and you know, all that stuff. But and I did want to touch on that, but maybe it's better that we didn't really focus on that.
But we
You
gonna
know,
be back next time. We could talk about, you know, it's not gonna be too far from now.
Yeah. So thank you, Sister Ella, and thank you for everyone who's still with us going into 2 hours. It's my pleasure to have these necessary conversations with Sister Ella, you know.
Yes, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in and, you know, sticking it out and coming back if you had to come back a couple times.
Yeah, you could listen to this. You could listen to this while you know, ironing your clothes in the morning, or while you're doing your laundry, or while you driving to work, or whatever it is that you're doing. You could just put this on, you know, on your phone or whatever, on your computer, your laptop, your tablet, man, and just, you know, just chill out with us, man, while we're having this necessary conversation.
So thank you, BruthaMikeX. High five from far away. We did it. And I'm looking forward to the next time. So all we got to do is call each other and press record, right?
Already.
And that's a necessary conversation. So I love you, Brother Mike, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Love y'all too, and I send my love and high vibrations for everybody.
Peace.
Peace. I'm gonna stop.